Hello. JP. Take one. So, okay. The poem that I decided to do is When You're Old by William Butler Yeats. William Butler Yeats was born June 13th in 1865, and he was widely acknowledged as the greatest poet of the 20th century. He belonged to the Protestant Anglo-Irish minority that controlled a lot of the social life and the political life in Ireland since the end of the 17th century. Yeats maintained his cultural roots, featuring Irish heroes and legends in many poems and plays that he ended up writing. So he really he loved Ireland. He was a nationalist. He loved his country. In 1885, he got his first piece of work published in the Dublin University Review. It was a poem. It was his first thing that he got published, so it was a big thing for him, Then he moved to London in 1886, and he met Maud Gonne, which this poem's actually kind of about, basically, because I'll get to that. But yeah, for nearly 3 decades, he pursued her, but she always just kind of turned him down. 3 decades, yeah, long time. Most of Yeats' poetry used symbols from ordinary life and familiar traditions, because Yeats, when he wrote poetry, he liked using everyday things, things that you can relate to in his poetry, which makes a lot of sense because it makes you relate to it more. So I like that. But in 1890, he helped found the Rhymers Club. It was where a bunch of London poets would get together in a group and share their poetry. Obviously, he was Irish, but he lived in London, so London. He began working with plays in the 20th century and became the president of the Abbey Theatre Group for the first 15 years of the 20th century. In 1917, he moved back to Ireland and married Georgie Hyde Lees. Yeats began a theory about automatic writing, and it was you close your eyes and you just kind of write all stuff you think about. And together, him and his wife created over 4,000 pages of just automatic writing, and this led to him having all these theories about how even though times were different, the basis of how you think is always the same, no matter how the world changes as we move on. And then as he grew older and aged, he got mad at how Ireland had changed, and he was getting mad because he wanted poetry to connect deeper with everyday things. You didn't have to use some crazy figurative language to try to get your point across. But yeah, he liked, and then he received the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1923 for his always inspired poetry. Sorry, I have bad handwriting. I can't really read my notes that I wrote. Okay, now let's get to the poem. So, first off, the poem is called When You Are Old, or When You Grow Old. Sorry, When You Are Old. And the poem refers to you as a second person, and this is key because Yeats' purpose for the poem isn't directly towards him exactly, because he wants to make it towards everyone, everyone who has felt rejected. That's why he used you. I mean, obviously he could say you, talking to, when you hear the poem, the girl, the lady, but you as in everyone who's been rejected can, not rejected, but everyone who did the rejecting kind of thing can understand. Like, and everyone can relate to it. It was This poem was published in 1892, and it was part of the collection of poems from the Rose. The overall tone of the poem is a melancholic and nostalgic tone. It's based on a 16th century poem by a French poet. Yeats took the title and the opening phrase from this poem that he was like basing it on. And so I'm gonna get into it. Let's get the poem open. Sorry, I gotta do it on my laptop because I'm recording on my phone. I don't have a book, sorry. Hopefully this is fine. Okay. So, when you are old and gray and full of sleep, and nodding by the fire, take down this book, and slowly read and dream of the soft look your eyes had once, and of their shadows deep. I don't know how important this is, but the rhyming structure is ABBA, and then CDDC, and then EFFE. I don't know if that's important, but that's what it is. So the first stanza is basically telling, if he's talking to Maud Gone, the girl, the lady, she's now old, and like this poem will remind her of her old days when she was young and beautiful. Stanza 2. How many loved your moments of glad grace, and loved your beauty with love of false or true? But one man loved the pilgrim soul in you, and loved the sorrows of your changing face. In stanza 2, he's saying that like many men loved her for her looks. Maybe some were true love, some were just, but most of them were just like loved her because her looks. And he was the one man who loved her for her soul and the sadness of her looks. So he was like the one that was always loved her and all that stuff. Because, I mean, he'd been going after her for 3 decades, and he proposed to her multiple times. She told him no, and like, obviously he's seen all these other guys, like, like, I don't know if he's seen them getting with her or anything, but he's seen all these other guys like going after her, and he was probably like jealous, and he was just kind of felt like garbage because like he actually wanted her, And the third stanza, and bending down beside the glowing bars, murmur a little sadly how love fled, and placed beyond the mountains overhead, and hid his face amid the crowd of stars. So basically she's saying, and then you'll realize that that love, that real love that was there for you, that wanted you, is gone now, and like she wasted it. She'll never find that love again. Yeah. I picked this poem because honestly, I just looked at it and clicked on it. Yeah, I don't know, kind of with the whole, I seen when you are old, and I kind of just made me think of like, maybe this poem would be about taking things for granted and living life in the moment. I thought like with the whole pandemic thing, like I was probably like, oh, I don't want to go to school tomorrow. And now that I can't have school, I want to go to school. So I thought it was going to be something about that, but it wasn't, kind of. Yeah, I think I did everything. Okay. Cool.